All right, well, so you found yourself at the Pleasant Street meeting. Let's see. Oh, and yes, thank you. Dan is going to be watching the reading room so I can give the presentation. Thank you, Dan. All right. So the agenda tonight, we're going to do just a round of introductions so you can meet the project team. Then we'll talk a little bit about the purpose of the project, what we've heard so far, the tools that we in the transportation department use to create safer streets, some next steps for the project, and then there'll be an opportunity for your input. Brief introduction. My name is Jen Rowe. I go by she or they pronouns. I'm a planner with the transportation department on the active transportation team. And being a planner can mean a lot of things, but for the purposes of this project, it's that I'm kind of managing the process, making sure that we hear from you and that we get this project built. And so now I'll pass it to my colleague, Dan, who's the engineer with the project, to introduce himself and share what he does.
Hi, my name's Dan Marrow. I'm a professional engineer and I work with the Active Transportation Group for the city of Boston. On these projects, generally, I am in charge of reviewing them and making sure they're up to city code as well as safe as can possibly be, following city and federal guidelines.
Thanks, Dan. And then we also have with us today a Spanish interpreter, Susana, and she is in the Spanish channel right now, so she can't really introduce herself, but maybe she can wave. And also Tara, who is with our engineering consultant team, Kittleson. Tara, would you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, hey, I'm grateful to be here. I'm with Kittleson, and I'm excited to work on this project with you all.
Thanks, Tara. Awesome. So I'll launch right into our presentation. During this portion of the meeting, the chat is purposefully off. I mean, you can message the project team, but we like to not have like two meetings going on at the same time because it makes it difficult for all people to be able to follow. But we will open the chat up later on when we get to the discussion so that folks who prefer to ask questions that way can do so. All right. So speak a little bit to the project. The goal here is to calm traffic speeds to make the roadway safer for everyone. And we're also particularly interested in making crosswalks better for people biking and walking, for kids, for older adults, and for people with disabilities. And we call out those specific roadway users because those are the most vulnerable people on the road. And we want to make sure we are particularly designing for their needs. The scope of the project is Pleasant Street between East Cottage Street and Sawyer Avenue. And you can see that on the nice map we have here. We can make changes to Pleasant Street, and it's the intersections of Pleasant Street that are non-signalized. Unfortunately, we're not able at this time to make changes to the signalized intersection at Stoughton Street. And that is for a number of reasons, and Dan can speak a little bit more to that a little later on, but at this point, the project is just incorporates those non-signalized intersections. And generally, when we go about designing projects with the transportation department, we start off with some observations. So we've been on Pleasant Street, we've observed the speeding that happens and some dangerous conditions for people walking. We then look at data to make sure that what we're observing is actually like how it plays out over the course of the day. We'll share a little bit about that tonight. And then we also want to hear from you. We want to hear what you're experiencing on the street, hear your stories. We did a little bit of that already. We did a walk of the corridor, which I recognize a few folks from that walk. And then we'll hear that today as well. And then we combine all those different inputs, and that leads us to our design proposal, which we will share with you. And so this is the beginning of the process right now, and this is how we kind of start something off. All right, so with that, I'm gonna pass it on to Dan to speak a little bit about the data side of this project and what we've seen so far.
Thanks, Jen. Earlier in October, we went out and we collected speed data at the locations where there's the red lines on Pleasant Street. We have machines that will measure the speed of the vehicles there. Additionally, we counted how many people were walking and biking through these intersections as well. So when we look at that data in amalgamation, this is the first place that we looked at. You can see the speeds are broken up into 1 to 24 miles an hour. So this is below the posted speed limit, 25 to 29, which is 5 miles over, 30 to 39, and 40 plus. So you can see at this location, the majority of people are going the speed limit. There's still a significant amount that are going 0 to 5 miles over the posted speed limit, and some that are going up to 15 over at this location. So if we move to the next one, you'll notice here at Trescott Street, we actually have a significant uptick in the amount of vehicles going 0 to 5 miles an hour over, as well as a slight uptick in the 30 to 39 mile an hour. And it's important to note that these speeds seem small in a vehicle, but they become increasingly deadly to people on foot or by bike. So any increase in these amounts are not great. And the last place we looked was at Hinckley Street, where you can see yet again there has been an increase in some places. Almost half of all the vehicles are going over the speed limit some amount. And again, we have a significant amount going over even 30 miles an hour, which is much more dangerous for people walking and biking in the area. So actually, I guess that's all we really need to say about that. We also go and we look at how many vehicles are using the street. So this kind of just gives you an idea of the patterns at East Cottage Street where the main movements are. So right now, the majority of the vehicles are going through Pleasant over towards Columbia Road. While we do still have a significant amount of vehicles making rights and lefts onto Pleasant and the southbound street. And then this is the same place in the evening. There's a significant amount of right turns onto Pleasant Street at this point, but the rest of the amounts are lessened comparatively. And this is just how many people are out there crossing the street to get, possibly to the park or in and around Columbia Road. As you can see, the majority of people are crossing Pleasant Street at this intersection.
All right, thank you, Dan. So now I'll speak a little bit to the other factor mentioned earlier, which is what we hear from you. And so we've heard from you so far through a few different ways. One, emails and phone calls that we received after we mailed out postcards. Hopefully some of you received those postcards, and that's part of the reason you're here today. We also had a walking tour on October 23rd. These pictures on the slide are from that tour, and we walked the length of the street and back and heard from folks about what you're seeing on the street. And then we're also having conversations with some non-residential stakeholders like the Edward Everett School, the principal there, and as well as folks from BCR. So a few of the things we have heard. One, crossings don't feel safe. We know that in many instances, drivers aren't stopping or yielding at crosswalks. We even heard this from the school principal about where even a crossing guard wasn't getting folks to stop. We also heard that there's no curb ramp across from Victoria Street, so that makes that crossing difficult for anyone who might be using a wheelchair or another assisted mobility device. We also hear that drivers are making some fast turns. Particularly, we heard this about drivers that are taking turns.
I think there's no character. I think for you, knowing you, and I think for me too, is like there's no character.
Sorry about that. Yes, so we heard, let's see, so particularly the side streets that drivers are making sharp turns off of them, and that they're often looking for gaps in the traffic, and to try to find a gap in the traffic, they maybe contributes to the speed at which they're taking this turn, but that those turns they might not be having the time to look out for who else might be in that area. We also heard a lot about East Cottage Street and that drivers are not fully stopping at the stop sign and sometimes speeding through the intersection. We heard about visibility, that in many cases drivers are parking very close to the intersections of the side streets, and that can lead to poor visibility. And additionally, the curvature of the street between Sawyer Avenue and Stoughton Street can make for poor visibility at that crosswalk. And we certainly observed that when we were out there with the principal during dismissal time, and that often drivers don't notice the signs for the school. And then some overall issues around speeding, which we saw in the data as well. We heard particularly that cyclists sometimes feel that they pressured to either go faster or pull to the side, and that can kind of lead to a dangerous situation where they have to sort of weave in and weave out. And that drivers are using the street as a cut through to avoid stoplights at Columbia Road and Dorchester Avenue, and that some of those drivers are drivers of large trucks and duck boats and buses. So those are the overall issues we've heard. And again, we'll provide, we know that that's probably not all encompassing. You probably have more to say as well. We hope that covers a lot of the themes that we heard, but we will provide another opportunity at the end of this to add in a bit more. So, oh, and then a few other notes. Some other concerns that we heard weren't ones that we can necessarily directly address with this project. So we did want to highlight that 311, the app, is a great way to report issues like street lighting that needs repair, drag racing, sidewalks that are in poor condition, or trash or street sweeping issues. So that's something we want to bring to your attention. And then I'll pass it back to Dan to speak about some of the potential tools that we have at our disposal before we open things up.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, so as we are putting together streets, we run into the same issues in a lot of places. And so a lot of those issues we have names for, and this is just a piece of what we use in our toolbox to combat these issues. The first one we're going to show you is clear corners. As you can see in this picture, there are drivers parked very close to a crosswalk. It can block line of sight, and you can't see people who may or may not be in the crosswalk at this time. So what we do is we do something called daylighting, where we block the first 20 feet up to a crosswalk off to greatly increase the visibility of people using the crosswalk. This matches our state laws anyways, where we shouldn't be having people parking within 20 feet of a crosswalk. It just reinforces it with some bollards, which are or I guess flex posts, which are the things sticking up on the road, and some paint to really reinforce that this isn't an area to be parked in. The other thing we go with is high visibility crosswalks. Some you may see in other cities, a little less paint on these. Boston goes for pretty much as much paint as we can go for in these crosswalks, and we try to make them all consistently sized and shaped so that people know what they look like and what to expect. We use high visibility paint, and we go with a very thick ladder, like you can see here. Another thing we can do to combat speeding is raised crosswalks. So if you notice here, the pedestrians don't actually ramp down at the street. The street will ramp up to the pedestrians level. So this kind of identifies this area as a pedestrian space, making it a nice, easy, clear walk across. And it also forces drivers to slow as they use the area because there is a change in elevation. So it slows down vehicles that use the area. Another tool that we have is the curb extension. So you've probably seen this a few places around Boston. It's what we have on the left here. We'll bump the curb out about 6 feet, and that does the dual purpose of, one, preventing vehicles from parking there, and two, pushing out the pedestrians and giving them a safe area farther out so that it is easier for vehicles to see them from a farther distance. And in some areas where we have very wide streets, we may have room for crossing islands. This, again, does dual duty of providing pedestrian protection. So you only really have to cross one leg of a 2-lane road at a time, as well as deflecting cars, which can also cause them to slow, which is what we want around these areas anyways. Generally, this is reserved for things like mid-block crossings, like you see here, not for intersections. And in the same vein of, again, slowing down people, we have a lot of Y intersections in Boston where roads don't meet perfectly perpendicular, and that allows vehicles to kind of speed through them, maybe ignore the stop sign, and this leads to a lot of crashes. One thing we can do for that is called teeing off the intersection, and this is taking those Y intersections and adding some extra concrete to kind of straighten it out. This lets the cars approach the intersection at a 90-degree angle. It slows down their turns, and it makes a shorter crossing distance for pedestrians that are using the space.
Great, thank you, Dan. So now I'll talk through what the next steps are for Pleasant Street. So in this coming winter, we're going to be reviewing your concerns. So anything that you shared today or that we hear in the next coming weeks. In addition, we're going to do some engineering field work to evaluate some of the potential interventions. So basically matching up the types of tools that Dan shared with the kind of context on Pleasant Street, seeing what will work where. Then in the spring, we'll come back to you with some concept designs. So a proposal of here's what we'd like to, what we could see working and in which location. And we will make some adjustments at that point based on your feedback. And then in the summer and the fall of 2022, we will be working with other departments and agencies to kind of further fine tune the design and share some updates with you as that kind of process rolls along. So with that, we want to hear from you. Where I'll open up the chat, and also we can call. You feel free to raise your hand, and we can call on you. If you for whatever reason don't want to share kind of in the public setting, you can also email your ideas to pleasantstreet@boston.gov. That email address goes to Dan and me, and so we'll be sure to see it. And you can also go to the project website, and we encourage you to do that. So, and to sign up for project updates. So if you add in your email there, you'll be sure to hear when there's another meeting or anything else of note. So I think with that, I will go ahead and make the adjustment to open up the chat. Just a heads up about some nearby projects. So there's the Mass Ave Better Bike project, which has been fully designed and will be constructed in the spring to have a protected bike lanes going in both directions on Mass Ave between Columbia Road and Melnia Cass. There's Dan mentioned that there's the neighborhood slow streets projects, and one of which is very nearby, Hancock Street. So please feel free to check out that project. We also mentioned that there's a dot block development and kind of another planning effort by the Boston Planning and Development Agency was Plan Glover's Corner. And so there was some, I actually don't know the exact status now. I know that there were some at least draft findings released from that, but we'll be sure to coordinate with the folks at folks there as well. Just to kind of clarify, the Transportation Department does, we will review anything that comes out of a Boston Planning Development Agency BPDA project, and we coordinate closely on that. I think the Plan Glover's Corner is at a stage where they don't have exact kind of plans yet. And Dan, unless you haven't heard it otherwise. Okay, great. So anyway, those are the projects that we know of nearby that you might want to check out as well. And finally, I'll leave it on this slide here. Please really do go to the website and sign up for that email list, because we'd love to see you at our future events as this project progresses. And I see that we have a question from James Pitts. And let me ask you to unmute.
So, and again, thank you for having this. So where are we leaving this? Is there going to be some kind of immediate like action at East Cottage and Pleasant, or literally down the lane? But or is this another thing? I mean, after years of calling for action, is this just going to take another year and a half before something can get done? I mean, we're talking about an intersection with the playground there, where we've already had, instances of testimony tonight where stuff has happened there that is life endangering. And so is there anything that could be put forward quickly to at least try and stutter this, to try and stop it a little bit? Do you have any ideas?
So I can answer that question for you, James. As part of this project, we won't be doing anything immediately. This is the design for the larger future project. You can make your problems known in 311, and also to the, like as I had said earlier, email to this website, or to the email Jen on the previous slide, I believe. You're concerned that we should be doing something kind of a quick improvement sooner, and we can get those to people who may be able to help with that. So I can't promise anything to you right now. It's not my place to promise that. But if that happens, I will be part of the design, and I'll do what I can to get things out quickly.
And I believe you, Dan, and that's great. But I mean, we've been calling for at least a couple years. And, and it's nice that you guys are doing this. It's really great because it's a long-term project. But we've been calling about immediate situations. And, the city just doesn't move on that. And that's very frustrating to us who live in the neighborhood when you have to deal with, can I cross this crosswalk without somebody running through this stop sign that they can't see?
Yeah, I get it. I don't think I can tell you anything that you want to hear right now. We have hundreds of crosswalks like that in the city. We're working very hard to deal with as many of them as we can right now. Jen and I are actually part of an entirely new team that was hired a couple of years ago to really dig into these issues. And we've done a lot, but there's only so many of us, and we're going to keep working hard, and we're going to do as much as fast as we can. But, you know, like you said, it is a city. There's a lot of, you know, government wheels grinding there that we got to go through. So the best you can do is tell us that you have problems here, and we can take that and try and turn it into action. So again, thank you for telling us that. The more things that you guys write in, the more we can do. You know, tell your counselors about it, send the emails. These things are all helpful.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add to what Dan said too is that our positions came about, you know, to a great degree because of folks saying we need more people to be doing this type of work more quickly. So things do change and move forward. So that's all.
No, I mean, and I know it's hard work. I worked for government for a while, and he's right. The grinds of government are slow, but you know, God help us all if a child gets hit by a car at an intersection and we could have done something about it, you know?
Thank you for speaking up, James.
All right.
Jen, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah. So I think I don't see anyone else in having raised questions in the chat or raised hands. So I think it might be a good point to call this a night. Again, please feel free to go to the website and sign up for that email list, email us anything that you think about later tonight and wished you said. That will make sure it all gets noted down, and that and we read it over and also pass it along to the engineers over at Kittleson who we're working with as well. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We look forward to hopefully seeing you all again when we have some concepts to share. So.